In recent days, Trump has drastically increased tariffs on various countries, effectively declaring war on the world. We are witnessing a pivotal historical turning point. Almost all economists agree that launching a tariff war is a massive mistake, yet Trump holds firm beliefs, and the MAGA populists have strong emotions. Some readers might also be unsure whether the losers of free trade have the right to oppose globalization. This is a good moment to review history and rethink the logic of globalization. If free trade is so beneficial, why do governments around the world impose import restrictions and promote exports? Traditionally, poor countries practiced trade protection while developed nations advocated free trade. Why is the U.S. now the one imposing tariffs? To make sense of these conflicting ideas, we must distinguish between zero-order principles and first-order corrections. A zero-order principle is a fundamental, systemic truth. If you consistently violate it, you will inevitably suffer. However, the world is complex, and exceptions do exist. Zero-order principles can be subject to limited or short-term adjustments. What we call first-order corrections. For example, people should eat enough every day is a zero-order principle. Consistently eating too little will harm your health. But if someone is dieting, they might eat less for a while or even do a 3-day fast. Is that okay? Sure. It's a first-order correction to the zero-order principle. Correction does not mean contradiction. In economics, the most important zero-order principle is that free trade is good. Any transaction, by definition, benefits both the buyer and the seller. If either party truly believes they're losing out, they can simply walk away. Trade always increases global welfare. However, due to the complexity of international affairs, the theory of free trade comes with 3 key first-order corrections. If your goal is to increase global wealth, you should favor absolute free trade. If your goal is to maximize your own country's current welfare, you should also support opening your markets, regardless of whether others reciprocate. Wouldn't you want your fellow citizens to pay less for better products? Restricting trade usually protects a minority at the expense of the majority. Before 1991, India practiced strict trade protection. Average import tariffs were as high as 90%, and cars weren't allowed to be imported at all. Only domestically produced vehicles were available, essentially clones of a British 1956 model. This protectionism kept modern products out of the hands of Indian consumers, preserving backwardness under the guise of protecting domestic industries. In 1990, after Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, oil prices soared. India, facing a serious foreign exchange crisis, had to seek help from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. The IMF had been waiting for this moment. Sure, we'll lend you money, but only if you open up your markets. From India's perspective, this was an unfair and humiliating treaty. Many feared disaster, worrying that India's fragile industries couldn't compete with foreign products. But that didn't happen. By 1992, India's economy had recovered to pre-1990 growth levels. Between 1992 and 2004, GDP grew at 6% annually, jumping to 7.5% after 2005. Sound familiar? China faced similar concerns when joining the WTO. Many feared for the survival of national industries, but in reality, WTO accession brought immense economic benefits to China. Modern Chinese tend to view history through the lens of humiliation, seeing the Qing dynasty's treaties with foreign powers as nothing more than national shame. But there's another perspective. Historian Ma Yong offers an alternative view. The Treaty of Nanking, 1842, led to legal foreign trade. The Treaty of Tientsin, 1858, opened up northern China. The Convention of Peking, 1860, marked the beginning of industrialization. The Treaty of Shimonoseki, 1895, opened up financial channels and foreign investment, spurring domestic entrepreneurship. The Boxer Protocol, 1901, triggered political, legal, and educational reforms that transformed China's institutions. These treaties were humiliating, but they forced China onto the path of modernization. Foreign trade helped the Qing government raise funds through customs and banks, enabling victories in key wars. Just as the Qing and Indian governments resisted opening up, today many including Trump's supporters, believe opening domestic markets is a form of national betrayal. This belief is rooted in mercantilism. It treats nations like corporations. If exports exceed imports, you profit. If imports exceed exports, you lose. But global trade doesn't work like that. If one country exports more than it imports, another must import more than it exports. Mercantilism treats trade as a zero-sum game. Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations pushed back against this idea. A country is not a company, and wealth is not gold or silver. It's productivity. If a product sells better abroad than at home, exporting it increases capital for further development. Likewise, importing cheaper foreign goods saves capital for more productive uses. Trade benefits both parties. It's a win-win. David Ricardo expanded on this with the theory of comparative advantage. Even if a country is good at producing everything, it should focus on what it's best at and trade for the rest. It's not just good for others. It's mathematically optimal for you. Smith plus Ricardo equals the zero-order logic of globalization and free trade. Some developing countries feel exploited by globalization. But if you honestly compare the past and present, every country's standard of living has risen. Globalization has made the world more equal, not less. Openness is ultimately good. That's why we should have faith in humanity. No matter how rocky the road, the world is one big family. But while zero-order principles must always be respected, international trade theory does require three major first-order corrections. The first correction is industrial upgrading. Not all work pays the same. Some industries generate more income than others. If your country's comparative advantage lies in low-income industries, but you want to move into high-income ones, what do? Smith and Ricardo offer no answer, but politicians have one. Trade protection. Take Henry VII of England, 1457 to 1509. He saw that the French Burgundians were making a fortune exporting wool textiles. The wool itself was cheap and British. So why not keep the wool in England, produce textiles, and sell those instead? So the English government taxed wool exports, gave tax breaks and monopolies to domestic manufacturers, and recruited skilled workers from the Netherlands and Italy. In today's terms, tariff protection, plus industrial policy, plus tech transfer, i.e. stealing. The result? England became the world's largest exporter of wool products. Britain applied these three strategies across industries, importing raw materials and exporting manufactured goods. Protectionism persisted until the 18th century Industrial Revolution, after which British industries were so dominant that they no longer needed protection. By the mid-19th century, Britain was preaching free trade, only because it had already won. At that time, the U.S. was protecting its own industries. In 1791, Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, argued that a strong federal government and military required a strong manufacturing base. And that base needed protection. The U.S. adopted the same three strategies as Britain: high tariffs, government subsidies, and technology theft, copying British textile machines, even sending agents to steal designs. The result? Rapid industrialization and booming GDP growth. America continued protectionist policies until 1944, by which point its GDP accounted for half the global total, and it led almost every industry. Then it too embraced and promoted free trade. In 1989, seeking to help reform Latin American economies, the U.S. proposed the Washington Consensus, advocating for developing countries to embrace free trade. Yet those who followed this advice didn't develop much. Countries like China and South Korea, which ignored it and instead maintained tariffs, industrial policy, and technology acquisition, successfully upgraded their industries. Today, China is promoting free trade, because it now leads in many sectors. History seems to show that those who want to upgrade must start with protection. Free trade rhetoric often sounds like a trap set by successful countries to keep others from catching up. No wonder Cambridge economist Ha-Joon Chang said developed countries climb the ladder of protectionism, then kick the ladder away to prevent others from doing the same. Smith and Ricardo didn't account for industrial upgrading. So how should one actually do it? It's not a conspiracy. Most economists still support free trade. Because in most cases, protectionism fails to deliver upgrades. We've already seen India's failed auto industry. Brazil once banned imported computers to nurture its own industry, but all that emerged were rebranded low-end foreign models sold at high prices. Many of China's protectionist policies also flop. Trade protection often ends up protecting backwardness. Believing it guarantees success is a survivorship bias. Hamilton's original argument was that, protecting infant industries helps them grow, so they can eventually offer cheaper goods than foreign competitors. The public tolerates high prices temporarily for future benefits. This idea is called the infant industry argument. This gives us several takeaways. First, the protected industry must be infant, what we now call emerging, with clear potential. Second, protection must be time-limited. A few years is acceptable. Decades is not. It becomes exploitation by vested interests. Third, protected industries must still face foreign competition. True growth happens in the learning zone, not in a vacuum. Protection must offer relative advantages, not total isolation. Some populists think Western sanctions are great for China. They'll force innovation. But innovation depends on connection. Before reform, China copied the USSR. After reform, it learned from the US, Japan, and South Korea. China has always combined learning from others with internal R&D. To help an infant grow, you must reduce protection over time. Before 1997, South Korea imposed strong protections, limiting foreign ownership to 26%. Then came the Asian financial crisis. Korea turned to the IMF, who, just like with India, demanded open markets. Korea complied. Foreign ownership limits rose to 55%. The IMF cracked down on anti-competitive behavior. Large conglomerates declined, while a wave of small firms emerged. Openness boosted not only foreign access but also domestic competition. The result? Korean innovation surged, surpassing Japan, possibly even Germany. Before 1997, productivity had stagnated. Afterward, it soared. Freedom and openness are still the most powerful truths. Reform under pressure is still good reform. Korea and China's success was also due to luck. They seized an unprecedented opportunity in global trade. That golden era may now be over. Trump's push to protect American manufacturing doesn't fit the infant industry model. It's about protecting decline. We'll explore that logic in the next chapter. That's it for today's content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.